Well, good evening. Again, on behalf of everyone here at the church, just want to welcome you to our carol service. Thank you so much for coming. Your singing has been fantastic so far. I'm sure it won't take a not, even with the coughs. The singing has been fantastic. My name's Chris. I'm one of the leaders here. And over the last few weeks here at the church, we've been looking at a series of messages which are about unwrapping the real gifts of Christmas. So showing how the birth of Jesus is how God shows to us what love really is, and how God shows to us what peace really is, and how God shows us what joy really is. And for these next few minutes, I just want to spend a little bit of time thinking about how Jesus and the birth of Jesus is all about hope. And I mean real hope. Hope that will give us a foundation to live on, even if everything else falls apart. Maybe it's a hope that some of us in the room are desperately wanting to have right now. Maybe we don't have it and we desperately want it. Maybe it's something that people are searching for. Maybe it's something that we don't even realize that we want. So tonight, what I want to do is just unwrap or begin to rip the paper off, as my boys are desperate to do at the minute, a little bit on why the birth of Jesus is all about hope. And I want to do it by talking about that last reading which Sean gave to us, which might have sounded a little bit weird. It said things like this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Strange thing for it to say. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. These are strange words to begin an account of someone's life. And these words, which kick off John's gospel account of the life of Jesus, they don't tell us anything about stables or shepherds or angels. They don't tell us the hows and wheres of Jesus' birth. They tell us the whys. And that's what we're going to look at, why Jesus is hope. Now, on Boxing Day, the film Collateral Beauty is going to be released in the UK. It's not had good reviews, so don't take this necessarily as a plug for it. But this is a film about a man called Howard, played by Will Smith. By all accounts, he is brilliant. At least he was, until a tragedy struck his life. He lost his 6-year-old daughter, and from that moment on, his entire world has fallen apart. He no longer cares about life. He doesn't care about the company that he's built. His marriage has fallen apart because he's not been able to deal with his grief, and he's effectively checked out of life. His life consists, at the beginning of the film, of him building huge, elaborate domino rally thing. That's what they used to be called in my day. Domino rallies in his office, and then he knocks them down without even watching how they fall. In an attempt to work through his grief, what he does is he writes 3 letters, not to people, but to kind of abstractions. He writes a letter to love, who, of course, in a Christmas film has to be played by Keira Knightley. He writes to love because he feels love has betrayed him. He also writes to time, who has to be someone slightly younger than him, who he recognizes as time being unable to heal the wound that he feels about the loss of his daughter. And he writes to death, who's played by Helen Mirren, so you know who to look out for, who he sees as an unfair, unstoppable force in the world. He writes letters which outline his pain at the darkness which has taken over his life. He is in a very, very dark place. And then, if you've seen the trailers, if you've been in the cinema, he has a series of unexpected encounters. People claiming to be love, time, and death show up to give him answers to his letters. The birth of Jesus, Christmas, works in exactly the same way. If you've ever looked out at the world and thought, why is there so much darkness out there? Why is there so much horrible stuff that goes on? Why are there things which at the very core of our beings we look at and think, that is just horrible? Why am I not all that I should be? If you've ever asked the question why, Jesus coming is about God answering that question. It's him turning up to answer the why that we ask, but also to finally deal with the darkness which plagues our world. So those words which were on the screen a minute ago, which are hopefully going to appear again, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's what we're going to think about for a few minutes. the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. They are strange ways of putting something, but actually it's really, really helpful. A person's word, the things that they say, is the way that we know them best. It's the clearest, truest, deepest way that you get to know someone. So let's imagine, and this is my gift to the men in the room who might not have bought presents for their loved ones just yet. Let's imagine that you're one of those people who struggles to buy gifts at Christmas. You've got that special person in your life, but time and time again, you just get it wrong. I wouldn't know anything about this at all, but let's just imagine that that's you. Imagine you struggle and you think, this year, I want to get it right. So you know that person is going shopping. You put on your best disguise and you follow them, putting aside all the thoughts that you just look like a crazy stalker, and you watch them. And they go into one shop and they pick up a jumper. They gaze at it. They smile and they put it back. Maybe it looks something like that jumper there. You then see them go into a jeweler's shop, and your heart sinks a bit because they've gone into a jeweler's shop, and they stop by a diamond necklace. They look at it for a few moments, and then their face just has that tinge of disappointment on it. When you try to work out which one of those gifts they want, it's not actually clear. Do they actually want both? Probably. But did they have a sense of disappointment when they looked at the diamond necklace because they're really thinking, I want it, but I feel it's too expensive, or they can't believe how someone would spend so much money on such a small thing? Did they smile at the jumper because they want it, or because it's the most hideous thing that they've ever seen? Until you ask the question, you don't have the faintest idea. Until you ask and you hear the answer come back, no, I really want the cheaper jumper. And that's a subliminal message for someone sitting over there somewhere. Until you get that back, you don't really know. Until they speak, until they say, until they give you their word, you don't know what they're saying. When someone speaks, they reveal themselves in a clearer, truer, deeper way. So when the Bible says that the Word became flesh and lived among us, and it's saying that Jesus is the Word, Jesus is the God who became flesh and lived among us, it's saying this: we can't really know God, not really know Him, apart from Jesus. You can know about God, but the clearest, most truest, deepest expression of who God is, you find wrapped up in the person of Jesus. So everything he will go on to say during his life reveals God's thoughts on those subjects. Everything he does in interacting with people reveals how God would interact with those people. If he's compassionate towards them, God would be compassionate towards them. If he is shockingly forgiving to them, God would be shockingly forgiving to them. If he confronts something, God confronts that. Jesus reveals God to us. At Christmas, God has chosen to become one of us and to make himself known. He's come as a human, he's come vulnerable, he's come weak, he's come killable. And what he does in life reveals to us that God has heard our cries and he's come to give us an answer. So what does Jesus do when he comes? He comes to take on the darkness. He comes to take on the darkness of our world. There was another strange verse that was read, that the light shines in the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. There's a reason why carol services take place in candlelight or fake candlelight and spotlights. It's to illustrate something. Jesus comes as a light in the darkness. If we were able to put out every light in this room in an instant, it would be dark, really dark. You probably wouldn't be able to see the person sitting next to you. Darkness in the Bible has always symbolized something. It symbolizes evil and suffering, like when we say, I'm in a dark place because of events that happen, or that was a dark time in my life. But it's also a symbol for ignorance and confusion. So when we might say, we're in the dark about what to get someone for Christmas. It's because we're saying we don't really know. Jesus coming is about taking on that darkness and pushing it away. And the way Jesus takes on the darknesses of our world is he comes to confront it and he comes to overcome it. Darkness exists in our world. We might not like to think of it, but you only have to turn on the news and there's darkness. I don't know if you saw earlier, but pictures of buses which were supposed to take refugees out of Aleppo got blown up. That's dark. That's a dark thing to happen. We feel that when we look at the news, but we also feel it every time a relationship goes wrong. So if you've ever been wronged by someone, you know that darkness has slipped in that moment. If an injustice has been done to you by someone else, then a gap opens between you and them. When you meet them, it's awkward. And if it's a really big injustice, that gap feels incredibly huge. There might be anger, there might be sadness, there might be pain, there might be bitterness. There's a gap. And if someone tries to glibly fix that gap simply by saying, I'm sorry, but doesn't do anything to rectify what they've done to you, if you're the one who's wronged, you're faced with a few choices. You could retaliate, and you could widen that gap just a little bit more. You could cut them out of your life, and you just know that if you see them on the street, it's going to be difficult and it's going to be awkward. Or you can do something to close the gap. And if you're the one that's wronged, what that means is whatever pain, whatever injustice, whatever it is that's been done to you, you have to do everything you can to restore it, which means you swallow the pain. You absorb the hurt. You take it back upon yourself. You have to let the injustice fall back on you, and you have to pay the price. Now, this is where Christmas gets personal. If this world is a dark place, and it can be dark, we all contribute to the darkness in some way. All of us do that. We contribute to it by how we treat the world, how we treat one another, how we ignore God. There's a gap that exists between people and God. And that's the reason Jesus came. He came to close that gap between people and God. He comes as a light in the midst of our very own darkness that we cause to close the gap. You see, the Christian faith is not one that says, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and live a better life. If Jesus is like a letter to humanity, it's answering the why question. What it's saying to us is this: you're broken. Let me fix you. Let me close the gap. That's what Christmas is saying. And so, in his life, you see this in the way Jesus lived. He reached out to the outcasts of the day. And he said, I'll fix you because you're valuable and you're precious to me. He challenged and he confronted the religious people who thought they were good enough and couldn't see the darkness that they brought into the world. And he did that because they were valuable and precious to him. And everything came to a climax at the cross. You can't have Christmas without mentioning Easter. You can't have it. God in Jesus came as the answer to all of our cries of why. Humanity rejected him, and the vulnerable God who was killable was rejected to such an extent that he was killed by the people he came to save. And history, not just the Bible, records that when Jesus died, darkness showed up. When he was dying, it was dark. And Jesus cried out a cry of being absolutely abandoned. Why? Because he was closing the gap between people and God, and he was feeling the gap himself. In the trailers for the film that I mentioned earlier, the character playing love will at one point say to the man who she's trying to drag out of his darkness, that if he accepts what she has to say, then maybe he'll live again. At Christmas, God shows up and says, if you want to know me, here I am. If you want to know me, here I am. If you want your darkness dealt with and the gap between yourself and God closed, see what I did for you. And I didn't do it because you're worthy. I didn't do it because you did something to prove yourself to me, but because I want you. I want you. And I want you to know me. And I want you to have a hope that no matter what this world throws at you, will last forever. That is the gift of hope that Christmas brings to us. A God who loves us that much to step into our world and deal with our darkness. In the last bit of the reading that Sean gave for us, it said these words, "To all those who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." Now that's hope. That's real hope. That's to be wrapped up in the greatest love, the greatest joy, the greatest peace, the greatest hope. And I want to encourage you to seek that hope this Christmas. Well, thank you for listening to me. As I finish, I want to kind of address how you might want to respond tonight. So first of all, if you've come along and you've enjoyed the carols, but you've thought, whatever that guy said I didn't quite connect with, you didn't find it convincing, that's absolutely fine. I want to say thank you, keep coming to things and keep listening. Because one day, someone might say it better than me. If you've thought the whole idea that Jesus reveals God is something new and unexpected and you want to find out more, maybe you've never thought of him as being anything more than a character from history. If you're interested, then let us know. We do regular courses where you can come and you can explore what Christianity is about with absolutely no compulsion to come more than once. No one's going to make you read the Bible. No one's going to make you pray. You can ask whatever questions you want, and what you do at the end of it is up to you. If you want to know more, let us know about that. And if you're a Christian, and maybe it's all gone a bit dark for you this year, and the wonder of Jesus stepping into history has been lost for you, I want to encourage you to see the amazingness of it once again. God becomes human, steps into history to deal with your darkness and close the gap between you and God because he simply wants you. That is an amazing thing. And finally, if you need to maybe receive Jesus for the first time tonight as the answer to your deepest need, then do let one of us know. We would be delighted to talk with you about it. Thank you for listening.